Instead of gaining influence, the US lost its grip on every region it invaded, leaving behind nothing but death, destruction, and hatred. As the US weakens, BRICS Plus is rising as the new center of global power, challenging Western dominance in trade, military affairs, and finance. Russia defying Western sanctions, strengthening its economy, and leading military advancements that have humiliated NATO. China, becoming the world's economic powerhouse, de-dollarizing trade, and forging stronger ties with Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East. India, playing a key role in BRICS Plus, increasing trade with Russia and China while ignoring US pressure to cut ties. Saudi Arabia and UAE, formerly loyal to the West, they are now joining BRICS Plus, ditching the petrodollar and shifting towards multipolar cooperation. Africa and Latin America, increasingly rejecting US influence, kicking out Western-backed NGOs, and securing better trade deals with China, Russia, and India. The BRICS-led world order is bringing an end to Western economic domination. The US dollar, once the global reserve currency, is losing its power as more nations trade in rubles, yuan, and local currencies, cutting the US out of global commerce. The economic collapse of the US and Europe, the last nail in the coffin. The Western economy is in freefall, plagued by inflation, rising debt, and collapsing industries. The US and Europe, after years of reckless spending, corporate greed, and failed wars, are now facing the final economic reckoning. The US economy, a ticking time bomb. National debt surpassing $34 trillion, spiraling out of control. Dollar dominance weakening, as BRICS Plus nations shift away from using the US currency in global trade. Mass poverty and social decay, with record homelessness, drug addiction, and crime plaguing American cities. Failed sanctions on Russia backfiring, crippling European economies instead of Moscow. Europe's economic suicide. Germany, the EU's economic powerhouse, is falling into recession due to energy shortages caused by anti-Russia sanctions. France and the UK are facing protests, economic stagnation, and rising discontent against pro-US policies. Eastern Europe is turning against the EU, realizing that NATO and Brussels offer nothing but war and economic hardship. The West is imploding economically, politically, and socially, with no one willing to save it. The brutal, pathetic end of the West. No sympathy, no salvation. The US and Europe are collapsing and no one cares. The same nations that the West exploited, bombed, and sanctioned will not lift a finger to save them. Africa remembers Western colonialism. Instead of helping Europe, African nations are embracing BRICS Plus. Latin America, long abused by the US, is forging stronger ties with China and Russia. Asia has outgrown Western dominance. The days of US and European economic supremacy are over. When the West falls, it will fall alone, with no allies, no sympathizers, and no one to mourn its demise. The empire of lies, destruction, and hypocrisy is collapsing, and the world rejoices. The West's inevitable doom. For centuries, the US and Europe ruled through manipulation, war, and economic coercion. Now their empire is dying, humiliated, defeated, and abandoned. USAID, NATO, the IMF, and the entire Western system of control have lost their power, and the new world order is emerging without them. This is the final chapter of the West's story, a brutal, pathetic end with no redemption. The world is moving forward, while the US and Europe sink into irrelevance, consumed by their own arrogance, corruption, and failures. The West is over. No one will miss it. No one will save it. And the world is better off without it. Conclusion. The alliance between USAID and George Soros's Open Society Foundations represents a complex interplay of philanthropy and geopolitics. While their initiatives are often cloaked in the rhetoric of democracy promotion and human rights, a closer examination reveals a pattern of interventionism that destabilizes nations and undermines their sovereignty. As the global community becomes more cognizant of these covert operations, there is an urgent need to re-evaluate the role of international aid agencies and ensure that their actions align with the genuine aspirations of the people they purport to serve.